Hello, Grumpy Old Fart here. I'm doing another family game night video from one of my absolute favorite games, Starfleet Battles. This is a story that happened years ago, and I'm titling it The Altar of Victory. And you'll see why here in a little bit. So what happened was, years ago, I had some friends over, and we decided we wanted to play a game of Starfleet Battles. And at the time, we'd been running a lot of single ship encounters and things like that, and they wanted a really big game because one guy had I want to say it was vacation, some sort of a vacation coming up, and he had nothing to do. A lot of us were out of work at the time, and it was because of our situation we had plenty of time, so we could run a big game. So we decided to run fleet battles against each other, and sorry, cat. And so we decided we were going to run fleets, and there was 5 of us playing. I decided to run the Romulans. My friend Bobby ran the Klingons. Kevin, from several other videos, was running the Kzintis. He loved running the Kzintis. And he was good at them, too. My friend Earl was running the Lyrans, and Randy, my friend Randy, was running the Hydrons. All these are good guys. They're good players, and we decided we were going to play a huge game. So we rolled a d6 for how many thousands of points our fleets were going to be worth, and it turns out we had 5,000 points apiece. Sorry, that cat is about to drive me crazy. Anyway, so we decided we were going to do 5,000 point fleets, and there were 5 of us playing. So we put 4 map boards together in order to have enough room to play. And we were not using a floating map, which for those of you who don't play means that if a ship leaves the board, it's considered to be retreated and warped off the board or whatever, and it's gone. Disengaged is the word they use. This was a very, very vicious game. This game lasted almost a week in real time. It was probably one of the most vicious games I've ever played. Things got hairy quickly. I had centered my fleet around a Romulan space control ship, and I had a number of cruisers around it, and I mean, we had 5,000 points. You could really go crazy with your fleets, and it was awesome. At one point, a flotilla of 6 Klingon fast patrol ships, and for those of you who don't know, a fast patrol ship is bigger than a fighter, but smaller than a capital ship. It's essentially a gunboat, but they come in flotillas of 6, and the Klingon had sent 6 of his PFs. They're called PFs, fast patrol ships, PFs. And that, by the way, stands for pseudo fighters. Anyway, he'd sent these 6 PFs on a strafing run to attack a Kzinti battlecruiser that had pulled ahead of the formation and wasn't protected on its flanks. So the Klingon hooked around and did a battle pass and unloaded everything on this Kzinti battlecruiser. Well, of course, the Kzintis fired back. And as the battle cruisers here, and as that flotilla passes it, just as it's passing it, the Kzinti launches every drone in his entire fleet aimed at the Klingons, and they started chasing this Kzinti or this Klingon flotilla back towards its carrier ships. Because they have what's called a PF tender that carries the 6 PFs, and it's like the mothership basically, and the Klingon player, Bobby, he couldn't tell at that point where all the drones were going to, because you have to understand, Kzintis are notorious for drones. And a Kzinti ship can fire a buttload of drones as their primary weapon, missiles. Drones are missiles. And so this Kzinti player, Kevin, is really good with drones, and he fired every drone in his entire fleet that he could bring to bear on these Klingons. And so there were stacks, 2-inch high stacks of drones converging on the flotilla. So imagine the setting. You're leading this flotilla. You're flying along, and you got 6 ships, and they're trying to escape these walls of missiles coming at them. And there's one Klingon PF, fast patrol ship, that has been really heavily damaged in the fighting, and he can't keep up. So the rest of them are pulling ahead of this guy. right? He's doing his best to try to keep up, but he just ain't making it because he just doesn't have the power. He's damaged. And so the Klingon player Bobby, he didn't know what he didn't know where all the drones were going, because that's one thing about Kevin. He had this wonderful way of targeting ships, and he had a knack for hitting things you didn't know he was aiming at. It was ridiculous. Kevin's really good with drones. So that little PF that's lagging behind, the drones are catching up to him. The rest of them they're catching up, but it's not as fast, and they're leaving that one little PF behind. He just can't keep up. And Bobby doesn't know where those drones are headed. He doesn't want to lead these big stacks of drones, missiles, back towards his motherships, his fleet, because that's going to be a nightmare dealing with all of them. I want to say, if I remember correctly, Kevin had somewhere like 100 missiles coming. I mean, it was a nightmare. So Bobby had to find a way to kill all those missiles. And he racked his brain. He was sitting there thinking and thinking and thinking. And the only solution, this is how vicious the game got. The only solution he could come up with was when their weapons recycled at the beginning of next turn, and that poor little PF is back there and all the missiles are surrounding him, getting ready to hit him. He fired on his own PF. The fast patrol ships in front fired on the PF in back and blew it up, so that the explosion killed all those missiles. That's about as vicious as I've ever seen in a Starfleet Battles game, because that PF was still a combat capable ship, and by the rules we had set, as long as you can still fight, there has to be a reason for you to self-destruct. You can't just blow up to blow up. We had a Gorn player at the time. Our house rule was you couldn't just self-destruct to blow up, because we had a Gorn player at the time who would charge all of his primary weapons and charge in the middle of the enemy fleet and self-destruct. And the plasma weapons for the Gorns, and Romulans too at the time, but the Gorns primarily, whenever a ship would explode, self-destruct, their plasma warhead strength was taken into the explosion strength. So you could do a lot of damage to enemy ships and fighters and things like that by doing that. But it wasn't a fair thing, because you spend years building a battleship or a dreadnought or whatever, and then destroy it just to damage enemy ships. Now there's something wrong with that. So we made a house rule against that. That little PF was still a combat capable ship. It wasn't crippled, so it couldn't, by the house rules, self-destruct. But the Klingon fired on his own guy and blew him up, and his explosion killed those missiles. I've been playing Starfleet Battles a long time, and that's about as vicious as it gets in a game. And I thought that I thought I might share that with you, because it gets hairy in these games sometimes. That little PF, that little fast patrol ship, was sacrificed on the altar of victory. You folks have a good day. God bless one and all.